All right, this video is going to be about solving systems of equations by substitution. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over this process step by step by step and do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again, like 6 different problems. See what we come up with. So, first problem that we're going to do is this guy right here. I want to solve this system of equations using substitution. Here are my steps on the left. I'm going to follow my steps as I do the problem on the right. Step number 1. Solve any equation for one variable. What that means is you have 2 equations here, and you need to make sure that one of them is either x equals or y equals, and if it's not, then we make it that way. So looking at the top equation, I have 2y equals 2x plus 2. Y is not all by itself, and x is not all by itself, so my step 1 is not done for the first equation. However, my second equation is y equals. So the bottom equation is solved for y. So step 1 is already done for me. Step 2, substitute that into the other equation and simplify. So since the bottom equation is solved for y, I'm going to substitute that into the top equation and simplify. If y equals 2x minus 1, then that y is going to become 2x minus 1. So I rewrite the top equation, and once I hit my y, instead of saying y, I know y is 3x minus 1. So I'm going to write out 2y, no, 2x minus 1. Okay, and then you keep writing the rest of it. So 2x minus 1 equals 2x plus 2. Now, as you can see, we have nothing but x's to go on this line, and I just continue this problem and simplify it. Distributive property usually happens when you do substitution. Not always, but most of the time. 2 times 2x is 4x. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. That equals 2x plus 2. The rest of this step says you should be able to solve for a variable. That variable in this case that I'm solving for is x. So now it becomes like a regular problem where, in this case, I have an x on both sides of the equal sign. So I'm going to get rid of the 2x on the right by subtracting 2x from both sides. That crosses out. 4x's minus 2x's gives me 2x's. Drop down the negative 2 equals, that's gone, drop down the 2. So now I have 2x minus 2 equals 2. Add that 2 to both sides. 2x equals 4. Divide both sides by 2. X equals 2. So step 2 says solve for one of the variables, and I took care of that. So now that I have x equals 2, I should be able to take this guy and find my y. I'm only halfway done. So step 3 here says substitute that into any equation to find the other variable. So I have one of 2 options. If my job is to find y, I could substitute it into the y up here, into the x up here, but if I substitute it into this x, it's already y equals, so why not make my life a little bit easier? So I'm going to rewrite that bottom equation, and instead of x, I'm going to write out 2 because x is 2. So I have y equals 2 times 2 minus 1, y equals 4 minus 1, y equals 3. Step 3 is done. Now, last but not least, my solution is going to be the point where these 2 lines, if graphed, were to intersect. It's a point. So if it's a point, my x is 2, my y is 3, I'm going to write out the point 2, 3. That is my answer. If I wanted to check my work, I would take my x value of 2, my y value of 3, substitute those into the original 2 equations, and make sure the math works out. And trust me, it does. So I'm going to use these steps to, at a little bit of a faster pace, go over the rest of these problems and see what we come up with. All right, here we go. Another problem. We have y equals negative 4x minus 7 and y equals negative x plus 2. My job is to solve using substitution again, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. If y is negative 4x minus 7, I already have step 1 done. Remember, from above, step 1 is solve any equation for one variable. Not only do I have the top equation solved for y, but I have the bottom equation solved for y too, which makes life much, much, much easier. So if y is negative 4x minus 7, and y is also negative x plus 2, then it would make sense that negative 4x minus 7 is the same as negative x plus 2. If y is this blue stuff and y is that red stuff, then the blue stuff is that red stuff. They're all the same. So now it's very similar to a problem I just did. I'm going to get x all by itself. And in this case, since I have an x on each side of the equal sign, I'm going to, let's add 4x this time. Plus 4x, cross u out, 3x, negative 7 equals 3x plus 2. Pretend that didn't happen. Negative 7, negative x plus 4x is 3x, plus 2 is plus 2. All right, minus 2, negative 7 minus 2 is negative 9. Bring down the 3x. Divide both sides by 3. X is going to equal negative 3, and I like to write it out like that. So I solve for one of my letters, x in this case, and now I need to find y. So one thing I can do is I can plug it into either of my equations. So why not use the top one? It doesn't matter if I plug it into the top one, I'll get the same answer as if I plug it into the bottom one. Actually, let me plug it into the bottom one, just because I want to deal with that double negative. Y equals negative x. Now, negative x. Normally, I'd write out x, but I know what x is. X is negative 3. So I'm not going to write out y equals negative 3. I'm going to write y equals negative 3 plus 2. What we have here is a double negative. Double negatives become positive. So I have y equals 3 plus 2, which gives me 5. So if x is negative 3 and if y is 5, then my final answer is going to end up being negative 3, positive 5. All right, the other side of this worksheet, I have y equals negative x minus 4 and 2y equals x plus 10. My first job is to get any equation solved for any variable, and that's already done. The top equation is already solved for y. So since negative x minus 4 is the same as y, I'm going to turn that y right there into negative x minus 4. So I'm going to rewrite the bottom, and instead of y, I'm going to write in negative x minus 4. 2y, negative x minus 4, equals x plus 10. In many of these problems, my job is to use distributive property. 2 times negative x is negative 2x. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8, equals x plus 10. Let's add 2x to both sides, because I have an x on each side of the equal sign again. That drops down negative 8 equals 3x plus 10. Let's subtract both sides by 10. Negative 8 minus 10 is negative 18. That equals 3x. One more step. Divide everything by 3. And x is going to equal negative 6. So halfway done. Actually, more than halfway done, I just have half my answer. Okay, so if x is negative 6, I could take that negative 6 and plug it into any of these equations, but it would be easier if I plugged it into the top equation because y is already by itself. So y equals negative x, but instead of writing out negative x, I know x is negative 6. So y equals negative negative 6, there's that double negative again, minus 4. Double negative makes a positive. So y equals positive 6 minus 4 is 2. My x was negative 6. My y was positive 2. My final answer is negative 6, positive 2. All right, negative 3x plus y equals negative 2, and 2y equals 8x minus 6. First step, make sure one of these equations is solved for either x or y. So looking at the top one, it's not solved for x or y. Looking at the bottom one, it's not solved for x or y either. So this is what I'm going to do. And there's multiple options. I can either get x all by itself up here, y all by itself up here, y all by itself down here, or x all by itself down here. I see two not so bad options. Option number one, get y all by itself because all you have to do is remove the negative 3x. Or option number two is get y all by itself because you can divide everything by 2. So, eeny, meeny, miny, moe, go, eeny, meeny, miny, moe, out goes y, o, u. So I'm going to do the top one. So I'm going to change the top one to get y all by itself. So this is just me rewriting the top equation, If I were to add 3x to both sides, y is now all by itself. Y equals positive 3x, negative 2. They don't combine because they're not like terms. My top equation became that guy. So since that was my top equation, I'm going to substitute that into the bottom equation. What that looks like is I'm going to rewrite the bottom equation, but instead of y, 2 times 3x minus 2 is going to be written instead, because 3x minus 2 is the same as y. 2 times 3x minus 2 equals 8x minus 6. Distribute 6x minus 4 equals 8x minus 6. Let's subtract 6x from both sides. Drop down the negative 4. 8x's take away 6x's is 2x's. Drop down the negative 6. 2 more steps. Add 6 to both sides. Add 6 to both sides. Negative 4 plus 6 is 2 equals 2x. Divide everything by 2. X equals 1. I'm going to write that over here because I'm running out of room. X equals 1. Now I take that guy and I could plug that into one of the two original equations, or since my job is to find y, I could just plug it into that equation that I wrote out here for y, which is what I'm going to do. Y equals 3x. Well, I now know that x is 1. Y equals 3 times 1 minus 2. 3 times 1 is 3. So I'm going to do this all in my head. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. Y becomes 1. So since x is 1 and y is 1, my final answer is 1, 1. All right, 2 more. Y equals 2x plus 5. Y equals 1/2 x minus 1. We ran into this one before. If y is this and y is that, then this equals that. So if again, like if I were to say if I am Mr. Perich and I am super cool, then you could say Mr. Perich is super cool. A true statement all the time. So let me see. Why don't I subtract half of an x? Subtract half of an x. Cross you out. 2x minus half of an x is 1.5x. Drop down the plus 5. Drop down the minus 1. Now it's a two-step equation. Subtract 5 from both sides. 1.5x equals negative 6. Divide both sides by 1.5. Divide both sides by 1.5, and x is going to equal negative 4. Okay? Now I have to solve for y. I could take any of the original equations. The top one looks better, so I don't have to deal with that pesky fraction. So I'm going to rewrite the top equation, y equals 2, and instead of x, I'm going to write out negative 4. Y equals 2 times negative 4 plus 5. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Negative 8 plus 5 is negative 3. X is negative 4. Y is negative 3. My final answer is negative 4, negative 3. All right, last but not least, we have 8 plus y equals 4x, y minus 2x equals 10. If I look at the top and the bottom, x is not all by itself, y is not all by itself, y is not all by itself, and x is not all by itself. So I have to solve one of these two for either x or y. Probably easier to solve either the top one for y or the bottom one for y. So since I have the room, why don't I solve the bottom one for y? So in this case, to get y all by itself, all I'd have to do is add 2x, 2x. These guys don't combine. Y equals 2x plus 10. So since I solved the bottom one for y, I'm going to take that and substitute it into the top y. So I'm going to rewrite the top equation, 8 plus y, and instead of y, I'm going to write out 2x plus 10 equals 4x. Now, these parentheses right here, not that important, because all I have in front of it is a plus sign, which basically says I have a group of 2x plus 10. In other words, I just have 2x plus 10. I have one of them, so that's that. These two combine because they're like terms and they're on the same side, so you have 8 and 10 make 18. 18 plus 2x equals 4x. I could subtract 2x from both sides. 18 equals 2x. I could divide both sides by 2, and x will end up being 9. Now that I have x figured out, I can find out y by plugging it into this red guy that I came up with here. So if y equals 2x plus 10 and x is 9, I can write out y equals to 9 plus 10. 2 times 9 is 18. 18 plus 10 is 28. If x is 9 and y is 28, I have the point 928.